to where we have our speaker come up, and I have the pleasure to introduce her. She is a survivor. She's a Safe Journey volunteer, and most importantly, she's part of our family. So with that said, please welcome Chris Howell to the stage.
Quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Good evening. My name is Chris Howell, and I'm a survivor of cancer and domestic abuse. I'm going to take you on a journey back in time to 1986. I was in my 12th year of coaching at the collegiate level and my 10th year as a basketball coach at the University of Minnesota. I was 34 years old and desperately wanted to be a mom. I met a man named Rob who was very charismatic and had 2 young sons. He was divorced and raising his sons on his own, who were 4 and 6 years old. I immediately fell in love with Zach and Luke and their father. We were engaged and married 9 months later. I was very trusting. I never thought someone who loved me and someone who said they loved me would do anything to harm me. My new home was a lodge in Malmo, Minnesota, which was very isolated. I would go days without seeing or talking to anyone. Soon Ralph needed money and asked me to withdraw my 401k from the University of Minnesota to use as collateral for a loan. My 401k was deposited in the bank and never seen again. Over the next 9 years, our family would relocate 4 different times. Each move became more isolating and with fewer resources. The first move was to Sealy, Wisconsin. Again, our living space was a small upstairs apartment in a restaurant bar 12 miles from town. Ralph began drinking more than normal. Alcohol was easily accessible because we owned a bar. One day, I was home alone. The authorities came, turned off the gas to our home and business, and turned off the phone. Ralph was in charge of our finances and had not paid bills. A short time later, the sheriff came and repossessed our car. Ralph was fired from his job again, and we were struggling financially. In 1991, we became the caretakers of the Wismo Club in Stone Lake, Wisconsin. It was again 14 miles from town. This was the first time in our 4-year marriage that we actually lived in a house. It was a caretaker's house, only 23 feet by 22 feet, but it was a house. Ralph was unable to get work due to his reputation in the area and needed to travel to the Twin Cities for work. I stayed in the country with the boys, driving a car we had purchased for $200 that was not dependable. I needed help and support to manage the 17 acres of property and was upset and frustrated in Ralph's commitment with our situation. The day I told him he needed to help me, he hit the kitchen table as hard as he could with his fist and yelled at me, "Don't ever tell me what to do." During this time, I was teaching physical education, coaching a school and a community boys basketball team, officiating high school and collegiate basketball games, and handling my responsibilities at the Wismo Club to help make ends meet. I was wearing too many hats, and my supermom cape was exhausting. I became ill and was eventually referred to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. Following my initial evaluation, I was transferred to infectious diseases. I was told all my major organs were shutting down, and I was being tested for AIDS. After 2 full days of appointments, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and irritable bowel syndrome. Both syndromes had been brought on by my stressful living environment. We met with a Mayo Clinic psychologist, and she laid out a plan for us. Following our visit to the Mayo Clinic, things began to change for about 6 weeks. Then Ralph reverted to his previous behavior. He was again fired from his construction job and also from the Wismo Club. We had 30 days to vacate our home. We moved our belongings to a storage unit and lived in a small one-bedroom cabin for 3 months. My final move was to 40 acres of land. The property had been vacant for several years and needed much work. We lived in a single wide trailer, 14 by 70 feet, wrapped with tie-back. In the winter, we had ice on the inside walls. Ralph continued to drink and was intoxicated on many occasions when he arrived home from work. One night he called me and he said he had gone in the ditch and asked me to help him. I told him I would not come and asked Zach and Luke to go help their father. Zach arrived home with Ralph and told me, "Mom, the road turned and the tire tracks ran straight off the road into the ditch. Dad didn't even try to turn." I could see how worried Zach was. I embraced him and told him how proud I was of him. Zach had become the man of the house before his time. One evening, the boys came home from basketball practice and dinner was ready. We waited and waited for Ralph to arrive home. Zach asked me, "How come we have to call home when we're going to be late and Dad doesn't?" And I responded, "Remember how this makes you feel. You make good choices so you never make anyone else feel this way." The three of us ate dinner and Ralph showed up 3 hours later. I began to recognize my health was failing. I was struggling with symptoms of chronic fatigue and irritable bowel syndrome again. In August of '97, our oldest son Zach enlisted in the Air Force and departed for basic training. It was difficult to see him go. Due to his size, he had protected both me and his younger brother from his dad for the past 2 years. Because of Zach's physical size, his father would back off when having a rage of anger. Ralph would choose to throw or hit objects due to Zach's presence. Many times his anger was taken out physically on our dogs. One evening he was so upset and he beat Kohler, one of our dogs, for not laying down. That night I had a bloody nose brought on by stress. As I looked in the mirror and saw the blood running out of my tear ducts, I said to myself, I will never be the dog. Following Zach's departure, his father began drinking even more than before. Over the next 6 months, life as I knew it grew even more challenging. Many times Ralph would be irritated and would intimidate both Luke and I by yelling at us for 20 to 40 minutes. I chose not to respond to his accusations. That made him even more angry. His ultimate goal was control. For example, one Saturday evening, I told him I would like to go to church. I knew better than to leave the house without asking him. He would have questioned where I was going. So I asked him if he would like to go to church. He responded, I'll let you know in the morning. Surviving on eggshells overnight, I got ready to go to church the next morning. I asked him if he would be joining me, and he laughed and said he wasn't going to church. I went to church by myself. When I arrived home, I received another lecture on what are you making for breakfast. During that meal, I sat at the breakfast table, chose not to eat, and cried the entire meal. In February of '98, 2 of my sister-in-laws took me to a domestic abuse center in the Twin Cities. I shared my story of emotional, financial, mental, physical, and sexual abuse while living with an alcoholic. I was asked by the counselor at the crisis center to challenge Ralph to see how he would respond. One day, Ralph asked me to overcharge a client on an invoice on something we had custom made. I told him we would not do that. He got very angry and put a screwdriver through a pressboard wall right over my head. Another sister-in-law took me to a domestic abuse center in Superior, Wisconsin. It was there I was informed I was not a biological parent and legally could not take Luke with me, or I could be arrested for kidnapping. With the help of a facilitator and 2 of my sister-in-laws, a protection plan was put in place for Luke and me. Because cell phones and emails were not readily available at that time, my protection plan was mailed to 3 individuals. They were told not to contact me as it was not safe for me to talk to them on the phone. I would contact them when it was safe. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing for the day I would leave. I drove 50 miles one way to a library in another town to write letters to the individuals I needed to notify. My hands and body were trembling as I wrote the letters, finished, and drove back home. I kept the letters, car keys, hidden in a box along with a phone card and a new credit card. My dear friends, Ellen, Scott, and Barbara helped with my plan. I was ready to go on a moment's notice. Less than 3 weeks after meeting at the crisis center, Ralph went on a fishing trip to Canada, leaving me with no contact information. My friends told me, this is it. It is time to go. I packed my car in the middle of the night. On Friday, March 13, 1998, I drove away in the blizzard in my car with some clothing and a few personal items. I left my sons, my home, my dog, my community, my school, my students, and my friends behind. I chose to save my life. I saw my sister Annie 2 days after I left. She was happy to see me, however distraught regarding my situation. She and her husband lived in Cloquet and had 3 small children. I was afraid Ralph would hurt her or her children, so I chose to protect them. She did not know where I was. When we got together and arrangements were made via phone, and we met at an identified location. My older sister Sally lived in Washington State, knew the address and the phone number where I was living. She provided information to my parents in California for me. I remember the first time I spoke to my parents. It was 10 days after I left. They were so anxious to hear from me and know that I was safe. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I checked into the Cornerstone in Bloomington and the Chrysalis Center for Women in Minneapolis. I weighed in at 104 pounds and was told I looked like a Holocaust victim. Clearly, I needed medical support. Had I known about the hospital-based Safe Journey program at that time, I would have selected a facility that offered medical assistance. I met with Molly, an advocate at Cornerstone. Molly told me I had made the right decision. She listened to my story, then said to me, "You have thought about this for a very long time. You know exactly what you're going to do." She was right. I did. I think I was just afraid to say the words or think about following through. She told me I had accomplished so much in such a short time. It had been less than a month since I had been at the crisis center with my sister-in-laws. During my first appointment at the Chrysalis Center for Women, I was fortunate to be matched with an incredible counselor named Lana Sacker. I was beginning my new life. She helped me manage a variety of emotions, panic attack, post-traumatic stress disorder, agoraphobia, and some days just surviving minute to minute. She provided the guidance for me to flourish into the person I am today. She taught me that the more vulnerable I allow myself to be, the more in control of myself I really am. It's a tough choice and a risky one too. The trouble is, if you don't risk anything, you risk even more. I'm so grateful for the life she has helped me build. It has been 17 plus years since I left my abusive marriage. My children have chosen to not be part of my life. When the TV commercial comes on and appears, "Do you know where your children are?" my heart sinks in sorrow. The ambiguous loss of my 2 sons in my life has been devastating. The loss of sharing Hallmark moments with my sons, the first prom date, meeting your fiance and future daughter-in-law for the first time, attending their weddings, being the mother of the groom, seeing their first home, holding my first grandchild, celebrating a birthday, holiday, or Christmas with an adult child and their family. the losses of social engagement in sharing their stories, adventures, and photos with family, members, and friends. The totality of these losses is very painful and causes much sadness. I will always miss Zach and Luke, but over time, the pain has become more bearable. The times and memories we shared together are all mine. They are treasures of what was given to me, not what was taken away. Sometimes to get from where we are to where we are going, we have to be willing to be in between. Detachment is part of being in between and doesn't come naturally for us. I thought about Zach and Luke every day and how much I missed them. I carried the following poem with me. Not flesh of my flesh, nor bone of my bone, but still miraculously my own. Never forget for a single minute, you didn't grow under my heart, but in it. I shed many tears for their loss in my life. After 14 years of hoping, I needed to let them go. Detachment is a gift. It will be given to you when you are ready for it. If I was ready to set them free, and with that decision, I could also be set free. It's not as easy as it sounds. Trying to forget someone is like trying to remember someone that you've never met. With those losses have been many gifts from family and friends who have shared their children and grandchildren with me. It is through those experiences and opportunities that I have gained strength, courage, and hope in the future. If life can remove someone you never thought of losing, it can replace them with someone you never dreamed of having. I have been fortunate to have found love again. Dan, in my book, you are my prince. In my movie, you are my hero. In my body, you are my heart. And in my life, you are my everything. Forgiveness is not about letting someone get away with what they have done, but choosing to no longer be represented by their mistakes, to become a survivor. It has never been and never will be easy work, but the road that is built with hope is more pleasant to travel than the road built with despair, even though they both lead to the same destination. Each day I open my heart to recognize the contentment in my life. Contentment is not the fulfillment of what you want, but the realization of how much you already have. I would like to thank the members of my village, my immediate family, my Gopher family, and my chosen family that are here tonight supporting me. Sometimes I hear something very small from one of you, and it fits right into this empty space in my heart. Thank you for your part in my journey. Thank you for your support, your compassion, and the unconditional love that you have given to me.